I told them next night.
It's good to see you, Mickey.
Mickey, where's Mickey? Mickey.
Sorry, I didn't mean
So
to
here we
interrupt,
are.
but I just saw her.
Oh.
It's
Hi,
her.
Sandra. So here we are, the Polio Quebec Zoom group, and we're very interested in what's happening with post-polio syndrome advocacy. Do we wait for Rotary to give us an okay? Do we invent our own Rotary group? Do we invent our own group? I'm gonna put this out to the people here. The steering committee talked about this. They talked about what are our strengths, what are our weaknesses, what are our opportunities, and what are the threats to this new group. What is the point of another group of post-polio people? And do we need the advocacy, or do we just need polio support? My opinion is that we need advocacy. We need a larger community that comes together for our help, for our needs, to find our needs, to find ourselves. And I'd like to put that out right now to each and every one of us as an opening statement. And
Now, have they put you up to this or suggested that you do this and
No.
can I get a feel?
as Mona always starts things, Mona started this. I just wanted to hear from this very active group what they felt. We've had this advocacy group for now about 6 months.
A little more.
Than that. And we've run on our own, and Ina is a wonderful leader and has found us many people to talk, subjects that are very interesting to us. Where do we want to go from here?
So one of the things I want to just put out there is I really want to know, when we say advocacy, what does it mean to each one of you? And do you do anything in your normal day-to-day life where you talk about post-polio syndrome, and to whom do you do that?
I can probably answer that one. And as long as I am able to still talk, I've always promoted vaccines. I just spent over 2 weeks in the hospital, and anybody that entered that room, that was whether they were medical or the floor cleaner, got asked whether they had children, if they were immunized against polio. It didn't matter, as I said, doctor, cleaner, and actually met a couple who had mothers who had polio. But this is me. This is what I do. And as long as I can still talk and breathe, that will still happen.
Do you think, Mickey, did you think people told you the truth?
Yep.
Good.
Because I'm in an area where 50% of the kids are not immunized, and they're very vocal. We have them standing on the overpass, which is a block from my house, waving at all the truckers and holding up obscene signs about vaccinating. So no, the ones I talk to, I am pretty sure. And, you know, some of them, I was very fortunate to have a student nurse assigned to me for a whole day. So I actually got a shower. It was wonderful. But she decided to do a history on me.
Awesome.
So we spent practically the whole day together, and she's going after her bachelor's now. I think she's starting her 4th year. It was very
Mickey, excuse
interesting.
me, Mickey, did she know anything about post-polio syndrome?
A little bit, but not much. The doctors did. I probably saw 7 or 8 doctors in the over 2 weeks I was there. And most of them knew about it. I made sure every one of them knew I had polio, that I just, it was not just what I was in for. They were all concerned about the slight swelling on my polio leg. So every person that come in, I had to say, no, this is normal. It's not fluid. It's just the way it is.
Right.
And then they come in and want you to push against your feet and everything. So you have to explain, well, I've had tendon transplant. This is all it moves. Really? You know, so, but the doctors, most of them were, I think the origin was another country, but most of them were born in Canada. And I was pleasantly surprised to know that every one of them seemed to know something about post-polio.
Good. Good. Is there anybody else that talks about it with family, friends, colleagues? Anybody else ask?
Okay.
Who we got here? Well, Marcy, start with you and then I'll get up to you, Mona. And then I think who was on the bottom, Wendy?
And
Oh, you want
Linda.
to talk about, okay. Okay, well, when we first started, I heard about starting the group, the advocacy group. That's when I really got interested in Rotary. And so that's why I saw it in our area, and I started attending the meetings. And just for your information, meetings are always open. So if anybody ever wants to just go to a Rotary meeting, you can. They usually have a lunch meeting or something, and you can be there and participate. So I just felt like it was something that I wanted to do, because I'm thinking, well, how many people do they actually have in their Rotary group that had polio, or that what they knew about it? Okay. So when we joined, when they said, they were asking why we joined, and I told them, this is why. I said, there was an advocacy group that started on the East Coast. And I figured if somebody was that interested in finding out about post-polio syndrome, that I wasn't interested in finding out more about Rotary, that meant a lot to me. And that's what I was there for. Unfortunately, I've told them that I would speak to them, but so far they have not asked me to speak for them. Okay. What's coming up, and I'm hoping I can do it as like a kind of an outreach program, is they're going to have a chili cook-off where all the proceeds are going to go to end polio now. So I'm going to bring it up to my local group, because I'm hoping that I can get them to go to the polio cook-off, because I think that we should have a presence, put a face to it. That's what, because they talk about polio and that, but putting a face to it, or seeing what people are going through or the problems that they have, I think that means a lot. And I just think if we can just raise awareness, I think that's just part of it, to make them aware that this is a thing.
I remember meeting John Nanny for the very first time from Delaware, and I saw him from the back in his wheelchair, and he has a sign on the back of his wheelchair that says, "This is what happens. Polio is what happens when you don't vaccinate." And I thought, oh, I'm in love with this guy. Let me see the front, and there he was, that big smile and that big welcome. And maybe it's not a bad idea for all of us to put that on our wheelchairs and our scooters and do that. I mean, that's a way of opening a conversation first about vaccination, and then to open up the discussion about this. Mona, you wanted to say something?
I wanted to echo what Marcy just said. I'm very interested in this advocacy group being part of Rotary. I believe that Rotary has a place for us, that we have a place with Rotary, that Rotary has not forgotten us, but that they're not aware that we have needs above and beyond ending polio. And that's what I would like to see Rotary do, is have a place for people with post-polio and the need to educate the medical profession. I have been always an advocate of polio. Every time I see someone walk a little different, I look at them, and the first question I will ask them is, did you have polio? Because if someone had polio, they would be insulted if I asked them another question. So I always ask the question, did you have polio? And 9 out of 10 times I can tell by the limp. And that's how I get through to people. I
Mhm.
also advocate to every single doctor that I've met that
Mhm.
are around. If I'm in a hospital, if I'm in a clinic, I ask them about polio, and 9 out of 10 do not know anything. I
Mhm.
bring my material with me. I went to my dentist. He was the first. I have a new dentist. He was the first other than medical doctor who was interested in my polio. He took the different x-rays. He asked me, he told me I had an odd bite, that I must be grinding my teeth. I said, no, this is the way my jaw is because of polio. And so he took my material, he read it. The next time I saw him, he asked me about it.
Good.
He asked me, yes, and he asked me about my, when you have your teeth frozen, the anesthetic. And I told him for many years, anesthetic didn't work on me. That when the dentist gave me injections, the dentist would say, I can't give you more. It'll hurt you. And I said, but you can't stop me from feeling the pain. And miraculously, about after 10 years of not being able to freeze my mouth, it suddenly was able to freeze. Have no idea why, but I have heard from other people that dental anesthetic doesn't always work.
No, they usually have to give you the anesthetic they would give you for oral surgery, and that usually works. So he might have switched it up for you.
That's
Might
what
have
he might have
switched it up.
done.
Yeah. Wendy, you wanted to say something?
Yes.
Oh, you said about talking to other people. Like when I was younger, I wouldn't tell anybody anything. Even my own kids didn't know until one day my mother said to them, your mother needs to rest. And they look at her and say, why? Because she had polio and she gets tired easily. And they just stood and looked at me because I had never mentioned it to them. And I just go about doing what I had to do. But now I do talk about it to
Good.
anybody, family, friends, anybody that wants to know, I talk about it.
Mhm. Well, part
Yeah.
of our advocacy is trying to bring the awareness to even the people around us. There was a young man who was on a Zoom when I was in California, and he said his mom had polio, and the kids, all her grown kids, always said, come on, mom, let's go take a long walk in the mall. You need the exercise. And I said to him, okay, time out. Let me tell you something that she doesn't even know. And we talked about how overuse and conserve to preserve. And this for him was brand new information. And it's not the first time I've had that conversation with people who have elders who had polio. So, you know, there's advocacy in all kinds of ways. And I just wanted to know. And when Mona said that her group, and she considers you her group, that all of you were interested in finding out which way we're going. I just wanted to fill in, and Dick, help me here if I'm out of step. And that is that Rotary has a very, very distinct organizational chart. And they have a lot of rules and regs and different kinds of groups. And we are trying to negotiate and navigate our way through that maze of finding out where we fit so that we have a global platform to talk about this, but also where we can honor the fact that not everybody is a Rotarian in our group. Am I close, Dick?
Yeah, Rotary's 115 years old, number one, and we're 1 year old. The way I look at it is that this group is in its birthing process and is here for eternity, because polio syndrome isn't going to go away,
No.
you know. And so that's why we've been kind of going thoughtfully, carefully, somewhat slowly making sure that we got things put together that would survive beyond all of us here that are talking to each other, because that's what it's about, number one. And yeah, Rotary is somewhat encumbered by lots of rules and regs and folks that look over your shoulder, and for the reason that they want Rotary to preserve. So, you know, survive. In polio now, Polio Plus is a thing we've been at for 35 years, since 1985. And we're real close. And a lot of the folks that have been very active in getting this done for 35 years are interested in making sure that there's a follow-on, but they don't want to interrupt that which they've got almost to, you know, 1/10 of 1% accomplished. So, you know, my purpose here is to listen to all you good folks and hear what the needs and wants are and how we might best serve, and how we as an advocacy group might pass down questions to you, like the lady that was telling her mother she needed to walk in the
Mall?
shopping center. Yeah. And so that person might contact an advocacy group who would then point her to Mona or Marcy or Minky or whatever to get the local feeling for what works in their locale, not necessarily what works in Africa or some other place.
So we also wanted to ask any of you if you have a very specific talent that we can plug into. I mean, have you got connections in the media? Do you have a friend or relative, a child of a friend who is in the media in some way? Can you get to talk to that person and say, you need to interview me, or can I be on TV? Or, you know, we all have to push that. We want as big an audience as possible. And then, you know, you hone your little talk to, yes, this is what happened to me at the beginning, but let me tell you what's happening to me now. And why we have to eradicate is that so all the people who've got it in the last 30 years don't get what we have ultimately. So I want you to think about your personal resources. What have you got to share with us that will help us advance? Because we don't ever want to feel like we're stuck. We think we're making baby steps toward where we need to go. And I know it must seem frustrating, like why tune into this Zoom when they're going to say the same things, and we're not saying the same things. We're trying to move forward every single time we meet. And the steering committee is a group of extraordinarily smart, talented, committed people who want the very best for every one of us. And so being part of that is an honor and a responsibility, a big responsibility. But we don't ever want you to think we're letting you down because we're not moving fast enough. That's all we want to make sure you know. Is that fair, Maureen?
You know how Mary Tyler Moore was the spokesperson for diabetes, and then what's his name was the spokespersons for Parkinson's? Why can't we reach out to Ishtak Perlman? He's one of us, for heaven's sakes.
He is. You know, this is what I did. I contacted Rotary International as soon as COVID hit and the vaccines were coming out. And I said, here is an opportunity for you to find all of the polio survivors. And there are many high-profile polio survivors. I said, and do a quick public service announcement that all you have to say is, I got polio 11 years before there was a vaccine. I believe in vaccines and I just got my COVID shot. Simple. I mean, the message was clear and I couldn't get any traction on that. And it seemed like the most obvious thing in the world at that time. And I couldn't get traction on that. So I tried with that. And I don't know if you can get a spokesperson. And I don't know what to do with that spokesperson. You know, we would need the support from a lot of places in order to get a Yitzhak Perlman to do that.
One other person you might consider is Alan Alda. He's another polio survivor.
Yeah, but he doesn't look like us, Martin. There he is. Look at that. You got an in. Send him that picture and say, remember me, Ishtar? I need your help.
When I met him, I said to him, I'm a polio. And he took both of my hands in his magical hands and he said, then we know each other very well.
Exactly. Exactly.
Well, and
I
just-
know.
let me say this, in one of the films that Isaac Perlman was in, Alan Alda came on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
One thing that he said to Alan Alda that I thought was very strange is that he attributed how he was able, as capable as he was, because he had the Sister Kenny method.
yeah.
But that isn't the end all. There's a lot more behind of why we're like this, and Alan Alda gets along pretty well. It doesn't have to, so I mean, that was like a published thing. It was like,
No, he made it sound like a cure, right?
yeah, exactly.
No. So
Well,
who
and-
joined us here, Martin?
I just was mentioning Alan Alda because I watched that, and he's a very interesting guy.
Yeah, he is. He's very science-based.
Yeah, and he's also very media savvy. Very,
Yeah.
very, if you look
Well-
at the MASH, all the MASH, we're really watching MASH right now, and a number of other movies, and he's very, very media savvy. So I don't know how to get a hold of him, but I would think that.
Well, don't you think any one of these high-profile people would have stepped up and contacted us?
Who knows?
What's in it
Who knows?
for them?
Huh.
What's in it for them?
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
Well, they could save people from getting polio by just stepping up and saying, get your vaccine, make sure your children are vaccinated.
Yeah.
Because
I-
there's
I
so
think
many,
I think there are a number of people out there that we'll bring on board in due course. And
Okay.
Isaac Perlman is certainly one of them. He's very active on public broadcast TV. And I saw him the other night, and he does beautiful presentations about things that are important, and certainly curing polio and helping with post-polio syndrome is one of them.
okay, I didn't know. Thank you for that. Thank you.
But,
If
you
I
know,
may, just
Who was
good
that?
morning all. My apologies for coming in late.
Oh,
Ina,
sorry.
just on the point of high profile people, my experience has been that high profile people like all of us are busy, and high profile people are inundated with lots of calls for their time, their support and their help. So they don't actually necessarily have to put their hand up to come on board. We have to ask them the question, I believe. They've got so many other offers that we just fall through the gaps.
Mm-hmm.
We're not big enough, we're not broad enough, we're not as popular as cancer, we're not known for, diphtheria or this or that or anything else. And so their time, whilst precious, if we don't ask for it, we're not even, front of mind for their thinking.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Bob.
I do tend to agree that high profile people, we have to have a very good reason and a very good group going before we can have these high profile people.
Agreed.
One of the people that, and I'm going to share my screen for just a moment here, that Sandra brought up is Ramesh Farish,
Yeah.
who is a very outspoken polio person who is gaining very much interest. And I wonder if he would be part of our polio advocacy group, or do we leave him at this point? Do we leave him work with ending polio? And once that is ended, then he can come on board with us, because he goes everywhere and raises a phenomenal amount of money
Yeah.
towards ending polio.
Mm-hmm.
He and I have been friends since 2008. And I met him through Rotary. He was doing the cycle to walk, where he cycled from BC right through to the west, or the East Coast rather, sorry. And he did a presentation for us. And in the book that our chapter is writing, I wrote a story, I wrote his story according to me and to what information he gave me and to the various trips that he made around the world promoting polio eradication.
Well, that brings up something else that we started to talk about before, and that is, Dick, was it Mike McGovern that we talked to who said that polio, post-polio syndrome is definitely on a list for after the eradication. They have a bunch of initiatives that they're talking about now in the what do we do next, you know, when polio is eradicated, and it could be in the next foreseeable years. What do we do next? And we are definitely on a list for that. Will we get as much play as maybe ending malaria? I don't think so, but we are on the list. And so we are not afraid of being lost by them or ignored by them, because we have now made the pitch to all the people in Polio Plus and in Polio Now and the Polio Foundation that we are here. We are here. And and I asked them, what can you do to help us do what we need to do once there is an eradication finished? So we know we're on that way.
Well, and the finish is 2 to 3 years away, you know, before the world is certified free. So this isn't going to happen overnight.
Correct.
Number one. And number two, yeah, I think we're on the list, certainly in the back of the minds of a lot of people that, you know, we've got some 70 laboratories around the world that GEPI is operating to track all the various strains of polio that get loose so that they can jump on it real quick and vaccinate those involved. When we get down the road 2 or 3 years from now, we're not going to let those 70 labs fall apart.
No.
We're going to continue to use them for whatever may be the need, pardon me, of the decade, whether it's malaria or whatever comes up. So, you know, that's part of the process and the thinking that's going on is how do we slice up the pie, as it were.
Right. The other thing that we discovered, and I didn't know this at all, and maybe you don't either, there is a brand new polio vaccine that does not shed the way that the Sabin vaccine sheds, developed in Belgium, and they've just sent 600 million doses to Africa. So there is, and it's on an emergency use right now, but there's tremendous testing on it as well. And the results so far are staggeringly wonderful, because it was the Sabin vaccine that they couldn't control. It's still mutated in the intestines, and it still caused the vaccine-derived polio. So there's things happening behind the scenes that we are just learning about. And I'm happy to be able to share that when we had the doctor speak. So it's been quite a ride for me to know all of that and to share that.
But I am so interested to hear from you folks, you know, what your needs are and what we might do in advocacy today around the world that would help propel us forward in a positive, effective way. So, Wendy, you're thinking.
Good morning again. I was interested to hear Dick say that we, after the list is, you know, considered, etc., that we're at the back of minds for people. I think that's important, but what's more important is being in the front of minds of other people. What other organizations, what other global bodies are there that if we've got to wait for 3 to 5 or 10 years for Rotary, and the 600 million doses is fantastic because that will take care of most of the African issue a lot quicker than the 10 years projected. But Rotary, in that 3 years, how many of us are going to die? How many new people coming in with polio are not going to know about post-polio syndrome? So how do we change the message? And how do we get the message to other groups other than the Rotary platform? Have we determined what other platforms are feasible? What other large organizations are there, whether it be membership or pay through fraternities or philanthropy or whatever it is? We just can't rely on Rotary, I don't think, to sell our message. We need to be more creative in our approach and our thinking.
Right. I agree with you completely. And I had a lunch at a restaurant today, and I kept noticing that there's a big building right down the street a little bit, and it said Chamberlain University on it, and it's in a funny little area. And I finally asked, what is that? And they said Chamberlain University is one of 17 campuses with different names around the country that is a nursing school, only nursing. And I'm going to call the medical director tomorrow, and I'm going to ask to speak. I'm going to ask to speak to the students in there as well. I'm going to also call the associations of physical therapists. And I'm going to say, get me on an agenda somewhere. It's about us getting out there and speaking to whatever groups are available to you. It could be the women's group at the church or the synagogue. It doesn't matter. As long as you show up and you are the advocate for this.
There are, from a perspective of who other than Rotary, the Churchill Foundation, for example, is in 132 countries and it is well funded. Scouting is in just about every country apart from communism, mostly, and some Muslim states. Girl Scouting, Boy Scouting, Grumpy Old Fart Scouting, they're there. Soccer is the biggest sport in the world, if you hear fanatics like me talk about it, or tragics, which is probably more to the point. But netball has nearly as many people, men and women, playing. We need to start going to grassroots. It's the kids who are telling the parents where to spend money. It's the kids telling the stories. We need to change our message to get kids to become the next focal point for post-polio and polio and whatever else comes after us. I don't think we can just leave our cell message, our advocacy footprint to one body, one mind, one thought. If I've got 5 fingers on my hand and they all bend at the same time, I want that message to go to 5 other large organizations selling the same talking points at the same time. So I now get global infusion, and I'm targeting 350 million people, not just 50 million. So I think we've got the advocacy group as such needs to say, this is how we're going to advocate. This is what we want people like these meetings of moaners to attribute to. And whilst we ask you questions, we've got to consider that the information, the communication model needs to be two-way. If you ask me a question and I provide you an answer in a graceful 72 hours, and I ask you a question, I don't want to wait 4 weeks for an answer, even if you are volunteers, because I think you don't value my voice, my opinion, or my viewpoint. And I'll go somewhere else to look for an answer. That's not what you want. So I think your communication model is one of the first things that the advocacy group has to really drill down to. This is how we're going to do it. This is why we're going to do it. This is what we're telling you. And this is what we want you to be engaged in. This is what we'll do back. I think that's the primary consideration, because I don't think that's happening.
Yeah, the Facebook postings are growing.
Yep. I don't do Facebook, so you've got to find another way to communicate with me. If I send you an email because you've asked for something, that's great. But if I send you an email because I'm asking a question and I don't get an answer in 3 or 4 weeks, that's not great.
Oh, not with this group. This isn't, they jump on it immediately.
They don't. They don't, actually.
Really?
I've sent one to John and one to Nanny and one to each other because none have responded, and I want an answer, and I'm still waiting. So,
was it an email?
Small
Bob,
to them.
was it an email?
It might be, I'm sorry, it might be small to them, but it's big to me because that's why I asked the question. So we've got to consider that there's lots of small me's out there. We may have a view, we may have an opinion, we may even have a great idea every now and again. But if you're an advocacy group and I'm coming to you for a question, then
I agree completely. I agree completely. I'm sorry, I'm going to beat them up.
Yeah, well, I'm waiting for a piece of 4x2 and a nail in the post.
Yeah, Bob, you're well respected in the group, and I'm certain
Thank you.
we want you to be involved with us on the many different levels.
It's hard to
Well,
imagine.
that's very kind, but if it's not a two-way process, how do I know that? How do I know that A, I'm valued, and B, you're going to actually follow up on my question?
Those two Johns are the most talkative guys we have. I'm shocked. I will find out.
And that's one of the things that makes me wonder, if we're associated with Rotary and or any other organization, be it our own developmental post-polio advocacy group, that we have to have a common communication, and that what one person says is similar to what another person says when we go out and we talk to the public. Right now, each of us has a slightly different opinion, a slightly different way of looking at things. Sometimes we push things upon people that don't want to be pushed. We do need to have an organization that helps develop a communication system.
We need a language.
We need a language.
Because we've all
We
got
need-
different knowledge sets and we've all been trained by different people about what our polio is. But my polio is not the same as Dick's polio, and the people who help Dick speak differently. You use different tools, different devices, different clinicians. I don't have them here. So if I don't have them and I'm talking one story and then later on a potential patron is hearing Dick's story and there's now a conflict, that leads to confusion. We want to eradicate that. So sorry, Mona, for cutting across you, but we need
You're
a
right.
language that is pertinent to all of us.
Mhm.
And advocacy can design that language.
And that's the important part of having a recognized association.
Mhm.
I understand that Rotary has us on the back burner, but until then, do we become silent until they accept us? No,
No.
we need,
No,
Find
that's
another
not, the
voice.
that's not even a possibility, Mona.
that's right, because I can't stop. But I do need to have the same information given to the physiotherapist I saw today after waiting a year and a half to see a physio who had no idea what polio was, but she was very considerate and did not overdo it when she found out the different things that are ailing me. She was very considerate and very obliging. So,
And that was a chance for you to say, how do I speak to every physical therapist in this facility?
right. I also here in Quebec, across Canada, I put an advertisement in the Physiotherapy Association to ask for someone of the Physiotherapy Association to come and be on my board of directors. Not a single person answered. This is a month-long advertisement. I don't know how many issues they give out, but I'm guessing at least 4. So I'm going to ask again, because I want the Physiotherapy Association of Canada to have the same information. And so I will continue to ask for their advertisements. But I think the most important thing is for us to be consistent in
Mhm.
what we are putting out. How do we become consistent?
Mhm.
Who has an idea of what our consistency should be?
Mhm.
Dick?
I just wanted to mention that anybody that's in the medical field will know about the DSM. It's a diagnostic book for medical people, and post polio has been listed in there.
Okay.
Not that they read it, but yeah.
Aren't there big seminars or whatever you want to call them that physical therapists go to, or
Yes.
physiatrist goes to,
Yes.
where they all meet somewhere?
Yes, they have conferences. Their physical therapy has an
Okay.
association and they have conferences.
Okay, and so if we know a date of those, wouldn't that be a start to get on their agenda?
Yes.
Well, I know
Yeah.
I'm a life member of the Canadian Physiotherapy Association. I was on the board for 6 years. So
Okay.
I'm just thinking, I still have contacts. I've been on different committees since I retired. So
Okay, there's
I
your
could see if-
talent.
if there's anybody around that still remembers me, I think so.
Doesn't matter. You just tell them who you are, they'll
This-
remember.
Yeah.
The second
Thank you,
largest,
Diane, if you would follow
Sure.
through on that.
Oh, I will, definitely.
second
Writing myself
largest-
a note.
sorry,
Mhm.
the second largest body for that is also anesthetists. They have generally in the States or their countries, they have 2 meetings a year where between 100 and 500 people go. but globally they have one a year and thousands attend, not unlike the physios. So I think that each category we need to target in a similar way, build a list and a profile and send one of each in every country to these things, or at least get a paper tabled for discussion.
That was Mike McGovern's suggestion to us, is that we just sort of fan out and we talk to as many groups as we possibly can, so that we are no longer on the back burner, but at least they've moved us up toward the front, because that's where the awareness comes in.
That's great.
Yeah. Anybody else?
Some more ideas from those that haven't spoken up?
Well, can I speak again about, and this is, I'm just thinking out loud, is today I had my second polio shot. And the literature, sort of interesting that she gave me, I talked to the nurse that did the second, my second shot. And the information that they do give out to people is there's no known treatment for polio, and previously infected people can become infected again with another type of polio virus. So that I was pleased to see that. And then some people develop muscle weakness, post-polio syndrome in brackets, many years after they had polio. So that's a little bit of advertising, not much, but also my last 7 years of employment were part of public health. I was working in a disadvantaged community. I wasn't doing physiotherapy, but I can also look at the possibility of public health, at least in our province, looking at how they can do more advertising.
That's exactly what we hope for when we talk to people who are committed to making this happen. So thank you, Diane, for that.
And we have to keep it consistent. This is the problem, is that the consistency is not there.
Well, you know, Mona, when I do my talks, I do an origin story. I have a little thing that I do, which is mine. And then I end it always by saying, you know, I came here really first and foremost to thank you for every minute you have spent and every dime you have raised to eradicate polio. And the reason I so support that is because this is what's going to happen to most polio survivors later in life. And then I explain what post-polio syndrome is. Merely the broad outline, because I'm talking to people who are hearing it for the first time. And the symptoms of it and what it means and how there is a diminishing of ability from it. And sometimes that's all it takes. You know, I have the facts of what the symptoms are, and I have the facts of how many people supposedly will get it, don't get it. And that's really that's the best we can do. That's the best we can do right now.
Then that needs to be printed and distributed amongst all of the people who are part of this advocacy association. And we have to use that as our motto, as our way of introducing ourselves to the medical profession. We need to have something consistent that says what it is we want.
Dick, you want to say something?
Yeah, we've talked about developing the lists of the doctors and the medical folks who we should contact or can be made available to other polios. And my way of thinking is that that's really a very local kind of activity where you know the local folks and you can get them on the list. And then through some type of a posting library system, if somebody from New York asks about what doctors are available in Nevada, you know, we can go to Marcy or whoever, and she can give them a list of who's active there. You know, I'm working on the folks at the University of Florida who have a major, super big computer. They've gathered some 5 million doctor interviews in that computer, listing all the different ailments and whatever that folks have. And within seconds, we can cull out of that 6 million the folks that mentioned polio. And then we know better what the population of polios is in the state of Florida. Well, I mention this because I suspect that may be going on also at Northwestern University in Chicago and California and all around the world and in Bob's locale. And maybe we need to ask those universities, what kind of data are they sitting on that we can plumb and pull out some plums for what we're doing?
That's a really good idea.
Yeah.
Sorry, Dick, just following that, there are these terms called big data, and that's part of it. The universities have their own big data and they drill down for specific reasons, mostly for new grants and more money. However, there are, sorry, but it's true, there are organizations that also collect big data, whether it be shopping centers, grocery companies like Woolworths or whatever. But the interesting thing for me is that they're collecting this data, and we could ask these organizations in the same way as you're going to ask the universities to disseminate who had polio, who's got this or who's got that, if we know who they are. So the biggest collectors of big data are the social media houses, be it Google or what's it called, Facebook and all these others. If we don't ask them the questions and have them work for us in a passive aggressive way, they've already got all that stuff stored. Most of it's in China on a cloud somewhere, thinking, oh, you know, I could give you this if you only asked. So let's start asking them. It's magic stuff.
I just had an interesting thought. You know, the minute I Google something like a new bathing suit, for the next days, I get inundated with ads for new bathing suits. What if we all Googled, how do I get polio? Maybe they would start sending us all this stuff. I mean, if you wait a minute, if you get an ad for a good bathing suit, fold it to me.
But the thing is, we already know about polio, so we're getting our own information back. We want the other 3 trillion people out there to Google polio, and they get the information.
But maybe it would show organizations, maybe it would show some research we don't know about. I mean, ask any question you want. That was just a thing.
It's a good idea, and maybe we should have that at a set time, at a set day, and really create some skewed bias on their data. So they have to ask the question, ooh, what happened there?
And we'll all write
something new.
And the algorithm would just keep sending us stuff. So who knows?
Which is great.
Well, and you know, we got 16 of us around the world, each of us with a computer. And as Bob and Ina are saying, hey, it's real easy to Google each one of us, you know?
Sounds like a great idea.
But the one thing about when you Google bathing suits, the bathing suit companies have gone out of their way to make sure that anyone who asks the question, they get their information out to you. It's because of the analytics of
the algorithms,
paying companies and paying associations that get that working. I'm actually going to be looking into that with my new communication person to see how we can get more information about polio out there. Like if someone says my leg is weaker today, then that is a clue for polio. But if we just say I had polio, we're not necessarily going to get Boca Florida's association name.
Let's try all different ways of asking the questions.
That's right.
You never know what's going to pop up, right?
What's going to pop up. And we need a computer expert to give us more advice on that. So this is part of what we need in our association.
Well, I think the more of us who ask, they call it search engine optimization, SEO. And so I think the more of us who ask, it's going to come to the top of something. And then it will be there, and that will be like the first thing. So we can put in our own post-polio advocacy email and a story about that. And it's going to happen. I mean, we can just turn it upside down.
Now we've had 1 hour of discussion on what do we want to see from this advocacy group. Do we want to continue as we are with a steering committee, finding out what's going on, and also another secondary group with speakers who are talking about information that's very important to us. What is it that we really want?
What do you want from us?
Yeah, yes.
And Mona is in that us.
And so is Dick.
Yeah.
The three of us are part of the us that want to make this come together. I want to hear from you guys. What is it you want?
And you can think about it and email her tomorrow. I just want you to know, we wanted to put it out there. We wanted to come and support, first of all, Mona and this extraordinary group of caring people. So you can think about that and tell us, what do you think? What do you think?
I think we need to somehow educate the doctors so that we have somebody to go to.
Good
So,
luck.
I know. Well, I mean, is that not a big deal, a big thing to?
Well, John Nanny and I are
do
going to
it.
start. John Nanny and I are going to start hitting medical schools.
How about those big conferences that they have yearly or whatever it is?
We want to go medical school so we get to speak to them before they graduate. That's what we want to do.
You
That's
know,
our
And by
goal.
the way,
well,
by the way, John Nanny is in Washington, D.C. as we speak,
Yeah,
advocating.
he's
money
speaking
from the federal
with lobbyists. Yeah,
So, and he's been there 3 days, so.
yeah, with that sign on the back of his wheelchair.
well, I reached out to Mike in a text and a phone call now, hoping that he would show up. But he was going to reach out to some people. He was going to try his best as far as Ishtok. I gave him the name of a heavy hitter, somebody who's got deep, deep pockets. He's been to the conferences in PHI, and I mean, they have a list, in their directory, but it's not updated.
Right.
So
Right. They need personnel to do that, and they don't have it. So it's up to us to do our local stuff. Do it
but
locally.
do we
Do it-
see them folding?
What?
Do we see PHI folding at some?
No.
But they
No.
need help. And
Yeah,
we're,
they just don't have it. They need a communications two people to keep that list going. So no, but do it locally. Let's start locally with your area. Contact, just make some phone calls. Does your doctor know about post-polio syndrome? Just ask the question of the person who answers the phone, and then ask, make sure they get back to you or call them again. Just ask. You don't have to talk to the doctor. Let them
Well,
talk to the doctor.
I happened to be at my primary today, and I asked her, "Do you know anything about polio?" And she, well, yeah, she's from Mexico or Cuba. No, Cuba. Excuse me. I said, "Do you have any other polio patients?" And she says, "No." And of course, well, can you lift this leg? Oh, no. How about this one?
No, I know.
But
I know.
by the time we get around to these organizations or these conferences, I mean, we don't need conferences. We know what we know. What good conferences for us would be a chance to commiserate with other polio survivors. We're not going to learn anything new. We need the conferences have to be towards the medical people, and
Sure.
I don't give them credit or whatever it's called, so that something to entice them. But then they're going to be thinking, "Oh, I don't have any patients. I don't have this, and I don't have that."
See, the problem is she probably does, but they don't say that they had polio when they came in, and it's not a question she asks. She'll say, "Oh, the muscle weakness is because you're aging. It must be arthritis."
yeah. And there is a lot of arthritis, but there is a difference.
Yes, there is.
Perhaps what we need is some type of an email that would distribute information and allow people to write in of their local information. A one single email address that is not associated with Facebook or Twitter, just an address that we as a group can put together the different information that comes. And from that information, we can make a uniform answer to the medical profession.
Mhm. All right, think about how that would work for you. We do have Ken has a separate email for our organization. That's not Facebook. He has a separate one.
So that is a possibility.
Everything is on the table, Mona. Everything is on the table. It's up to you and your group the next time you meet to sort of sort this out, amongst yourself, and then see which way, with all of your talent, and your geniuses, which way we're going to go with your group. And then you can report back to me.
I think that is what we need to do.
Yes.
And we have several people from this group who have offered to help with this advocacy group.
Good.
And I would like them to come forward either to me, to this group.
Yes.
And I will amalgamate the information, and perhaps Ken's email will be something that we can distribute as our beginning of our registry.
Sure.
Perhaps that's what we should call it.
Sure.
What do you think?
Put
Should-
that list together, and then we will start to compile the registry. Okay?
So is there going to be a meeting on March 9th?
Yes. I believe that there is. I know that Ken put something out.
I have to go back and look.
Okay.
It's the same day as my meeting.
On
I'm
this
coming to
note-
your meeting. Am I just a guest at your meeting, or am I speaking?
No, you're not.
At this point, I'm going to close the recording because
Thank you.
it was a recording for our advocacy group.
Thank you all. Good night. Be well, be happy, be safe.
And spread the word.
Spread the word.
Thank you,
Bye.
Anya.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you.
so much for coming and being part of this.
Thank you, Mona. Bye, Marcy. Bye.